The charity gala at the Waldorf Astoria was the kind of event where I usually worked, not attended. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't wearing my usual black server's uniform with the white apron. Tonight, I was dressed in a borrowed emerald gown that my roommate Carmen swore brought out the warmth in my dark brown skin, and I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. I'd been serving at Dominic Valente's private events for 6 months. 6 months of balancing trays, refilling champagne glasses, clearing plates while wealthy people talked through me like I was furniture. 6 months of being invisible, which was exactly how I wanted it. In my line of work, serving drinks to a mafia boss and his associates, invisibility was survival. But tonight Carmen had convinced me to crash this gala. Just for fun, she'd said. Just to see how it feels to be on the other side for once. She'd gotten us fake invitations through her boyfriend who worked in printing, and I'd agreed because, well, why not? I'd spent half a decade serving these people. Maybe it was time to pretend to be one of them for a night. I reached for a champagne flute from a passing waiter's tray, strange being on this side of the exchange when I felt it. A hand strong and unmistakable gripping my wrist. My blood turned to ice even before I turned my head. I already knew whose hand it would be. I'd served him enough times to recognize that grip, had watched those hands sign documents that ended lives, had refilled his whiskey glass while he made calls that destroyed families. Dominic Valente. My employer. The most feared mafia boss in New York. And he'd just recognized his waitress at a gala she had no business attending. His voice was low, sharp with something that sounded like anger when he spoke. What the hell are you doing here? You think this is some kind of joke? The words hit me like a slap. Not a greeting. Not curiosity. An insult. Like I was so far beneath him that my presence here was offensive. Like I'd committed some crime by daring to wear a nice dress and drink champagne in the same room as him. Terror shot through me, but it came out as fury. I'd learned a long time ago that showing fear was the fastest way to become a victim. So instead, I yanked my arm away with more force than was smart, my dark eyes flashing as they locked onto his face. Around us, I could feel the room shifting, conversations dying mid-sentence as 300 of New York's elite suddenly realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Nobody challenged Dominic Valente. Nobody talked back. Nobody lived to tell the tale if they did. But I was thinking about every insult I'd swallowed over the years. Every time someone had snapped their fingers at me like I was a dog. Every dismissive comment. Every time I'd been treated like I was nothing. And something in me just snapped. My voice carried across the ballroom before I could stop it, clear and sharp and utterly reckless. Insult me again and I'll end you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. My death sentence. I watched Carmen's face go pale across the room. Watched 300 people freeze like someone had pressed pause on their lives. For a moment, absolute silence blanketed the room. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, could feel every eye in the ballroom boring into us. The orchestra had finished their piece, and even they seemed frozen, waiting to see how a mafia boss would respond to such blatant disrespect from a waitress. I was dead. I knew it. You didn't threaten Dominic Valente and walk away. Especially not if you were nobody. Especially not if you were black, female, and worked in service. Then he did something that shocked me more than if he'd pulled a gun right there in the ballroom. His expression changed. The anger drained away, replaced by something I couldn't read. He looked at me, really looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. When he spoke again, his voice was completely different. Softer. Almost gentle. You're right. I apologize. That was uncalled for. Then he did something even more shocking. He smiled. Not the cold smile I'd seen him wear during tense meetings. Not a threatening grin. But something genuine that reached his steel gray eyes, transforming his usually cold features. His next words were quiet, meant only for me. Meet me on the terrace in 20 minutes. Please. I need to explain. Then he walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart racing and my mind reeling. Around me, the room slowly came back to life, whispers starting like a brush fire, spreading from person to person. But I couldn't move. Couldn't think past the fact that Dominic Valente had just apologized to me. To me. His waitress. The woman who refilled his drinks and cleared his plates was supposed to be invisible. Carmen grabbed my arm, her voice urgent. Girl, what the hell was that? We need to go. No. Before he changes his mind and has you killed. But I shook my head, surprising myself. No. He said he wants to explain. I need to hear what he has to say. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. I found him 20 minutes later on the terrace overlooking Central Park. The October wind cut through my borrowed dress, but I barely felt it. He stood alone, hands in his pockets, and when he turned to face me, I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Regret. I'm sorry, he said before I could speak. What I said in there, how I spoke to you, it was wrong. You caught me off guard and I reacted badly. But that's no excuse. I crossed my arms, not ready to accept his apology. You were angry that your waitress dared to show up at your fancy party. That's what that was about. No. He moved closer and I fought the urge to step back. I was angry at myself. For 6 months I've watched you work at my events. Watched you handle drunk guests with grace. Watched you smile politely while people treated you like you're nothing. And I never said a word. Never acknowledged that you're the hardest working person in any room. Never thanked you properly. And then tonight I see you here looking beautiful, finally on the other side of that invisible line, and my first instinct is to question whether you belong. He shook his head. That says everything about me and nothing about you. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process a mafia boss being vulnerable with his waitress. Why am I here, Mr. Valente? I kept my voice steady. What do you really want? I want to offer you a job. A real one. Not serving drinks, but something that actually uses your brain. He pulled out his phone, showing me a document. I've been watching you, Naomi. Not in a creepy way, but I notice things. You notice things too. You hear conversations people think you're not listening to. You see details others miss. You're smart, observant, and people underestimate you because of what you do and who you are. That's valuable. Valuable for what? I need someone I can trust. Someone who can move through my world without being noticed. Someone who can help me with something important. He paused. I'm trying to get out, Naomi. Out of this life. And I need help from someone who isn't part of it. Someone who has no reason to betray me because they have nothing to gain from my world. Why would I help you? I asked. You're a criminal. You hurt people. Why would I want anything to do with that? Because 7 years ago your father was killed. Thomas Wright, custodian at the courthouse in Chicago. He witnessed something he shouldn't have and he died for it. The police called it a mugging. But it wasn't. My whole body went cold. How do you know about my father? Because I have the records. Every death ordered by the people I'm trying to bring down. Your father's name is in there. And I can help you get justice for him. But only if you trust me. I stared at him, my mind racing. My father. The man who'd raised me and my sister alone after our mother died. The man who'd worked himself to exhaustion to give us a better life. Who died on a rainy Tuesday, stabbed in an alley 3 blocks from work. Show me, I whispered. For the next 3 weeks, my life became something I never could have imagined. By day I was still Naomi Wright, waitress at high-end events. But now when I served drinks and cleared plates, I was also listening. Watching. Photographing documents left carelessly on tables. Recording conversations people had because they didn't think the black waitress could matter. Dominic had been right about one thing. I was invisible. And invisibility was power. We met late at night in his office to review what I'd found. He'd explain what the conversations meant, how the pieces fit together. And slowly I started to understand the scope of what we were dealing with. Richard Hayward, District Attorney. The man who'd built an empire on corruption while pretending to be a hero. The man who'd ordered my father's death because Dad had seen him meeting with the Calabrese crime family. "I'm going to destroy him," I told Dominic one night, my hands shaking as I looked at the proof of my murder. "Whatever it takes. We'll destroy him together," Dominic said quietly. "But we do it right. We do it legally. Through the FBI, enough evidence that he can never escape justice." Over those 3 weeks, something shifted between us. I started to see past the mafia boss to the man underneath. The man was trying to dismantle his father's empire piece by piece. Who put violent criminals in prison by anonymously tipping off the FBI. Who paid for the education of kids whose parents had been killed by mob violence. And he started to see me. Not as his waitress but as Naomi. A woman with her own story, her own pain, her own strength. One night, working late in his office, he asked me something that had clearly been on his mind. "Why do you do it? Work as a waitress when you're clearly capable of so much more?" I was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. "Because it's honest work. My father taught me that. He was a custodian and people looked down on him for it. But he took pride in his work. Said that cleaning was important, that somebody had to do it and it might as well be done with dignity. I guess I inherited that from him." "He deserves better than what happened to him," Dominic said softly. "Yeah. He did." Dominic looked at me, then really looked at me, and I felt something shift in the air between us. "You deserve better too, Naomi." My heart started beating faster. This was dangerous territory. This man was my employer, a criminal, someone from a completely different world. Getting involved with him would be the stupidest thing I could do. But I'd also spent 3 weeks watching him try to be better than his circumstances. Watching him fight to escape a life he'd never wanted. Watching him treat me with more respect and kindness than anyone in his world ever had. 1 month, I heard myself say. "We have 1 month until everything comes together with Hayward. Ask me again when this is over." His smile was small but genuine. "Is that a promise or a threat?" "Both." But we didn't have a month. We barely had 2 weeks. I arrived at work one morning to find a note tucked into my locker in my handwriting. "Stay away. You're in danger." I had no choice. My blood turned to ice. I tried calling him. Nothing. Tried calling the office. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Come to the Chelsea warehouse on West 22nd. Come alone. Your sister's life depends on it. You have 1 hour." My sister. My baby sister, who was supposed to be safe at Columbia, studying engineering and dating a sweet guy from her physics class, and living the life our father had always dreamed for us. I knew it was a trap. But Keisha's face flashed through my mind and I knew I had no choice. The warehouse smelled of rust and decay. I entered through the loading dock, my hand wrapped around the cheap mace I carried in my purse. "Impressive. I didn't think you'd actually come." I turned to see Richard Hayward step from the shadows, flanked by armed men. He was distinguished looking, probably charming in court. He smiled at me like we were old friends. But it wasn't Hayward that made my blood run cold. It was the man beside him, hands bound, blood on his face. "Dominic, you didn't really think you could take me down, did you?" Hayward's voice was almost paternal. A waitress and a mafia boss with a conscience. It's almost adorable. "Where's my sister?" My voice was steady despite my terror. "Safe. For now." Hayward showed me his phone. Keisha tied to a chair, tears streaming down her face. "But whether she stays that way depends entirely on your cooperation." My mind raced, trying to find a way out. Then I saw it in Dominic's eyes. He was trying to tell me something, a slight movement of his head. "There's one thing you got wrong." Dominic's voice cut through the warehouse. "We were always 10 steps ahead of you." Everything exploded at once. FBI agents crashed through windows and doors. Red laser sights danced across Hayward's men. FBI. Weapons down. The takedown was swift. Hayward tried to grab me, but a shot rang out and he dropped, shot through the shoulder. Dominic rushed to me as agents swarmed in. "You okay?" I nodded, shaking. "Keisha." An agent brought her out of a van unharmed. It had all been staged. The video, the threat, everything designed to draw out Hayward. The aftermath changed everything. Hayward's empire fell. My father's death was finally recognized for what it was: murder by a corrupt official. They held a memorial at the courthouse where he'd worked. I accepted condolences from people who dismissed his death years ago. Keisha was safe. The evidence brought down 3 crime families. And Dominic kept his promise. The Valentine Pyre was dissolved. He cooperated with prosecutors, and Dominic Valente, the Mafia Boss, ceased to exist. 3 months later, I stood in my own restaurant in Portland, not serving food but owning the place. Small, intimate, serving food inspired by my father's recipes. I'd bought it with money from a victim's compensation fund. The bell above the door chimed out. "We're closed," I called out. "Open tomorrow at noon. I'll wait." I froze. I knew that voice. Slowly, I turned to find a man in jeans and a sweater, looking different. "Free, Dominic." "Actually, it's David now. David Valentine." He smiled tentatively. "Freelance journalist. Turns out I'm good at uncovering corruption from the legal side. You said you'd disappear." "I did. Just not as far as you thought." He moved closer. 3 months ago you told me to ask again when it was over. I remember. Well, it's over. Hayward's serving life. Your sister graduated with honors. And I'm just a guy, asking if you'd like to grab coffee with me. I laughed through sudden tears. You came all this way for coffee. I was hoping for dinner too. Maybe a walk. A conversation about whether people can really change. His expression grew serious. "I know I can't erase who I was, Naomi. But I want to spend whatever time you'll give me showing you who I'm trying to become." For 7 years, I'd been driven by grief and the memory of my father. Maybe it was time for something new. "Coffee sounds nice," I said softly. "But I have conditions. Name them. You call me Naomi, not sweetheart or baby or any of that. You tell me the truth always. And you understand that if you insult me again." I smiled, remembering the Waldorf. "I reserve the right to end you." David laughed, genuine and full of hope. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As we walked out into the Portland afternoon, I realized sometimes the most powerful endings are really just beginnings. The Mafia Boss and the waitress who'd threatened to end him had both died in that warehouse. But Naomi Wright and David Valentine? We were just getting started. We found a coffee shop nearby, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art. David ordered black coffee, I got a latte, and we sat by the window watching the city. It felt normal. Impossibly wonderfully normal. So, investigative journalist. That's what you're doing now? It is. Working on a piece about police corruption in Seattle. Nothing as dramatic as before, but important. He smiled. Everything I learned translates pretty well. I know how criminals think, how to follow money trails. And you're happy? Getting there. Some days are harder. I forget for a second I'm not that person anymore. But then I remember, and yeah, I'm getting there. We talked for hours. About his new life, my restaurant, the strangeness of being normal after everything. About Keisha's graduation and her engineering job. About the documentary he was making about Hayward's empire. It was easy. Comfortable in a way that shouldn't have been possible between a former mafia boss and his former waitress. When the cafe closed, David walked me back to my restaurant. The Portland evening was cool, smelling of rain and coffee and possibility. "Can I see you again?" he asked at my door. Or was this just closure? I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd been born into violence but fought his way out. Who'd risked everything to do right. Who'd helped me get justice for my father. "Tomorrow," I said. "Come by at noon. I'm testing new recipes and I could use an honest opinion. If you're not afraid of a little manual labor." His laugh was warm. "Naomi, I once watched you work a 12-hour shift serving people who treated you like furniture. I think I can handle washing some dishes." I smiled. "Good. Then it's a date." As he walked away, I watched this man who'd somehow become the most important person in my life. This man I'd threatened to end, who'd smiled and apologized and changed everything. I should have known it was too perfect. Should have remembered that fairy tales don't exist for people like us. But for 3 beautiful weeks I let myself believe. David came the next day and helped in the kitchen. We fell into a rhythm. He'd work on his investigations, I'd run my restaurant. Evenings we'd explore Portland together. Nothing fancy, food carts, bookstores, walks along the river. We didn't talk about New York. It was like we'd agreed to leave the past behind us. On our 8th date, standing on the Hawthorne Bridge at sunset, David kissed me. It was gentle, tentative, perfect. I've wanted to do that since the Waldorf, he whispered. When I threatened to end you. Especially then. 2 weeks later he stayed over for the first time. We'd gotten caught in the rain, laughing as we stumbled up to my apartment. We'd barely made it to the bedroom. Afterward, lying tangled together with rain on the windows, I let myself think the word I'd been avoiding. Love. I was falling in love with David Valentine. The thought terrified me. But it also felt right. In the morning, I woke to find him at my kitchen window with coffee. Morning, I said, wrapping my arms around him. Morning. Made coffee. Hope that's okay. It's perfect. And it was. For 3 weeks, everything was perfect. Then I came home to find David on my couch, head in his hands, the TV on. What happened? He looked up, fear in his eyes. There's been a shooting. A federal prosecutor in Seattle. She was building a case against the Calabrese remnants. Killed in her driveway this morning. My blood turned cold. The Calabrese family. The same one that had killed my father. It's retaliation, David said hollowly. The FBI is warning everyone involved. They called me. Said I need protective custody. What about me? You too. They're sending agents tonight. We have to leave, Naomi. Both of us. I sank beside him. Leave. Just when I'd finally built something real. How did they find us? I don't know. But someone talked. His jaw clenched. We were targets again. The FBI agents arrived 2 hours later. They told us 30 minutes to pack. 1 bag each. I moved through my apartment in a daze, throwing clothes into a bag. I looked at everything I'd built. 3 months. I'd had 3 months of normal. It wasn't enough. David appeared in my doorway. Hey, we're going to be okay. Are we? I kept my back to him, not wanting him to see my tears. Because every time they promise we'll be safe, someone else ends up dead. Naomi, why did you come here, David? I turned to face him. We could have stayed separate, stayed safe. But you came to Portland and now they've found us. You think this is my fault? His voice was flat. I don't know. I wiped my eyes. I just know that for 3 months I was finally living. Finally feeling like myself. And now it's over. The agents knocked. Time to go. David looked at me, something breaking in his eyes. I'm sorry. For all of it. For being who I was. For bringing danger back. For making you love me when you should have run. He walked out and I stood there wondering how everything had fallen apart so fast. They took us to a safe house outside Eugene. A ranch house on 5 acres, surrounded by trees and silence. David and I barely spoke during the drive. At the safe house they gave us the rules. Stay inside. Don't call anyone. Don't go near windows. Guards would rotate every 12 hours. It was a prison disguised as protection. That first night, David and I slept in separate rooms. I lay awake listening to every creak, wondering if this was how I'd die. Around 3 a.m. my door opened. David stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt. Can't sleep either? I shook my head. He sat on my bed. I'm sorry about earlier. What I said about you loving me. I had no right. I interrupted. Love you. I do. He went still. You do. I'm angry at you. Angry at this situation. Angry at the universe for giving me 3 weeks and then taking it away. But yes, I love you. And that's the worst part. Because loving you means I can't walk away. I'm stuck caring whether you live or die, and that terrifies me. David's hand found mine in the dark. I love you too. Have since that terrace probably. When you were just the waitress who looked at me like I could be better. What do we do? Finally asked. We survive. Like always. He squeezed my hand. And when this is over we go back to Portland. Back to your restaurant and my investigations. We don't let them take that from us. Promise? Promise. He stayed that night, both of us fully clothed on top of the covers, just holding each other. Two people clinging together in the dark, trying to believe in morning. We survived that night. And the next. And the one after. Days blurred in the safe house. We played cards. Watched old movies. Cooked together. Made plans for a future we weren't sure we'd have. On the fifth day, Agent Martinez came in, her face serious. We have an update. The FBI arrested someone this morning. Thomas Reeves, former clerk in the DA's office. He leaked your locations. He was on Hayward's payroll and the Calabrese family got to him. Is he talking? David asked. He's talking. She almost smiled. He gave us names, locations, everything. The FBI is making arrests. The immediate threat is over. I felt something unlock in my chest. So we can go home? Another week or two to be safe. But yes. You can go home. After she left, David and I sat in silence. It's really over, I said. It's really over. I started crying, big relieved sobs I couldn't control. David pulled me close and I felt him shaking too. We held each other and cried for everything we'd been through. For our fathers. For all the victims. But also for ourselves. For the fact that we'd survived. That we got to go home. 2 weeks later, Agent Collins drove us back to Portland. The city looked exactly the same, but we felt different. When we walked into my apartment, everything was as we'd left it. Time had frozen. But we hadn't. That night, lying in bed with David's arms around me and Portland rain on the windows, I finally believed it. We were safe. We were home. We were free. The next morning I reopened the restaurant. David went back to his investigations. We fell back into our rhythm, but deeper now. More intentional. Every moment felt precious because we knew how easily it could have been taken. 3 months passed. Then 6. Trials continued. People were convicted. The Calabrese family's power crumbled. And slowly, we built the life we'd dreamed about in that safe house. On a Tuesday evening in spring, David showed up at the restaurant after close with flowers and a nervous smile. I have something to ask you, he said. And there in my restaurant he got down on one knee. I know we've been through hell. I know I'm not perfect and this life isn't what either of us planned. But Naomi, you make me want to be better every single day. You saw past the monster to the man underneath. You gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. He pulled out a simple ring. Will you marry me? I looked at this man who'd apologized when he'd insulted me. Who'd helped me get justice for my father. Who'd fought to become someone worthy of love. Yes, I said through tears. Yes. As he slipped the ring on my finger, I thought about that night at the Waldorf Astoria. About the girl in the borrowed dress who'd threatened to end him. About how far we'd both come. Sometimes the most powerful endings are really just beginnings in disguise. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony by the Willamette River. Keisha was my maid of honor. A handful of friends attended. No mafia. No violence. No danger. Just love. Just us. Just the beginning of something beautiful. And when people asked how we met, we'd smile and say we worked together. Which was true in a way. I just left out the part about threatening to end him. Some stories are better left untold. Some transformations are too complicated to explain. Some love stories don't fit neat categories. Ours was all of those things. Messy. Complicated. Imperfect. But it was ours. And standing there on our wedding day, David's hand in mine, I realized something important. I'd spent years being invisible. Years have been underestimated. Years of letting people treat me like I didn't matter. But I mattered. I always had. And sometimes the greatest power isn't in being seen. It's in knowing your own worth, regardless of who's looking. I'd threatened to end Dominic Valente that night at the Waldorf. But what I'd actually done was help him end the person he'd been forced to become, so he could finally be who he wanted to be. And in the process I'd ended my own old life too. The invisible waitress. The girl defined by grief and anger. I was Naomi Wright Valentine now. Restaurant owner. Wife. Survivor. Woman who knew her worth. And I was just getting started. But life has a way of reminding you that nothing good comes without a fight. That fairy tales are just stories and reality is messier, more complicated, more dangerous than we want to believe. It happened 3 months after the wedding. 3 months of blissful, ordinary, beautiful married life. 3 months of running my restaurant, watching David's investigative journalism career flourish, hosting Sunday dinners with Keisha and her fiancé. 3 months of believing we'd finally escaped the shadows of our past. I should have known better. It was a Tuesday evening and the restaurant was in that quiet lull between the dinner rush and closing time. I was in the kitchen testing a new recipe for my father's jerk chicken, trying to get the spice blend just right the way he used to make it when I was a kid. The smell alone transported me back to our tiny apartment in Chicago, Dad humming old reggae songs while he cooked, telling me stories about growing up in Jamaica. The bell above the front door chimed and I called out without looking up from my work. We're closing in 20 minutes but I can still seat you if you're quick. I'm not here to eat. The voice made my blood run cold. Not because I recognized it, I didn't. But because of the tone. Flat. Professional. Dangerous. I turned slowly, my hand instinctively reaching for the knife I'd been using to prep vegetables. A man stood in my dining room mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit that screamed money and power. He had the kind of face that was forgettable on purpose. Average height, average build, the kind of person who could disappear in a crowd. But his eyes weren't average. They were cold, calculating, and fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. We're closed, I said, keeping my voice steady. You need to leave. He smiled and it was like watching a snake bare its fangs. Mrs. Valentine. Or should I call you Naomi Wright? Or perhaps you prefer your maiden name, though I suppose that's redundant now. My heart was hammering but I kept my face neutral. I don't know who you think I am but you need to leave my restaurant. No. He moved closer, his hands in his pockets, completely relaxed. Like he owned the place. Like he owned me. I know exactly who you are. The waitress who helped bring down Richard Hayward. The woman who destroyed the Calabrese family's operations. The person responsible for 27 arrests, including several of my associates. Who are you? I demanded, my grip tightening on the knife handle. My name is Vincent Calabrese. The man smiled wider at my sharp intake of breath. So you do know the name. Good. That makes this easier. I'm what you might call the family's long-term investment strategist. While my cousins were busy getting arrested thanks to you and your husband, I was overseas, managing our international operations. Building something bigger. Something better. What do you want? I kept the counter between us, my mind racing through possible escape routes. The back door was 15 feet away. My phone was in my pocket. If I could just, what do I want? Vincent laughed, a sound devoid of humor. I want what you took from me. You destroyed my family's empire. Cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. Got my cousins locked away for life. And you did it all while pretending to be nobody. Just a waitress. Just an invisible little black girl serving drinks. The way he said it, dripping with contempt and something uglier, made rage flood through me, momentarily overriding my fear. Insult me again and I'll end you, I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. The same words I'd thrown at Dominic that night at the Waldorf. The words that had changed everything. Vincent's smile grew sharper. There it is. That fire. That's what I wanted to see. Do you know what I've learned in my years of business, Naomi? The best way to destroy someone isn't to kill them. That's too quick, too easy. No, the best way is to take everything they love and make them watch as it burns. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Vincent's eyes flicked to it. That'll be your husband. I had one of my associates pay him a visit at his office about 10 minutes ago. Don't worry, we're not going to kill him. Not yet. But I want you to understand something very clearly. His hand emerged from his pocket holding a phone and he turned it to show me the screen. It was a live video feed. David in his office at the Portland Chronicle sitting at his desk. He looked normal working on his laptop, completely unaware of the camera watching him. But I could see the shadow of someone standing just outside the frame. One call from me and he dies, Vincent said simply. One word and your sister dies. She's at her apartment right now, by the way. Unit 4B. Studying for her engineering finals. My associate is in the hallway waiting for my signal. Terror clawed at my throat, but I forced it down. Forced myself to think. What do you want? Vincent pocketed his phone and moved closer to the counter. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to help me rebuild what you destroyed. You're going to use those skills, that invisibility, that ability to move through spaces unnoticed, to help me establish new operations. You're going to be my eyes and ears in places I can't access. And in exchange, I let your husband and sister live. I'll go to the FBI. They'll protect us. Will they? Vincent's smile was predatory. The same FBI that's been systematically defunded and stretched thin? The same FBI that couldn't protect that prosecutor in Seattle? Besides, do you really want to spend the rest of your life in witness protection? Running again? Never speaking to your sister, never building a real life? He gestured around my restaurant. All this, everything you've built, gone. Is that what you want? I'd rather lose everything than help you hurt people. Noble. Stupid but noble. He pulled out his phone again. Let me show you what nobility gets you. He tapped the screen and suddenly I was looking at photos. Crime scene photos. Bodies. Men, women. People who'd stood up to the Calabrese family over the years. Each image more horrific than the last. This is what happens to people who say no to me, Vincent said quietly. So I'll ask you one more time. Will you help me? Or do I make a call right now and turn your husband into the next slide in my collection? My mind was racing. I needed time. Needed to warn David, needed to contact the FBI, needed to do something other than stand here trapped like an animal. I need time to think, I said. You have until midnight tonight. That gives you 3 hours. Vincent headed for the door, then paused. When Naomi? Don't bother running. Don't bother calling the police or the FBI or your husband. I have people watching all of you. One wrong move and they die. He smiled one last time. I'll be in touch. Then he was gone, disappearing into the Portland night like he'd never been there at all. That I stood there for a full minute, frozen, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. Then training kicked in. The same survival instincts that had kept me alive when I'd been gathering evidence against Hayward. The same strategic thinking that David had helped me develop. That I couldn't call David. Couldn't call Keisha. Couldn't go to the FBI. But I also couldn't let Vincent Calabrese use me to hurt more people. Couldn't let him rebuild an empire on blood and violence. That I needed help. But not from the obvious sources. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. A name I hadn't called in over a year. A name that represented everything I'd tried to leave behind. Marco Santini. Marco had been one of Dominic's, David's, closest associates back in New York. One of the few men from that world who'd actually tried to go straight when the Valente Empire fell. He'd moved to Seattle, opened a security consulting firm, and specialized in helping people disappear when they needed to. People who were running from dangerous situations. People like me. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. This is Marco. It's Naomi Valentine. I need help. There was a brief pause. Then, tell me everything. I told him about Vincent, about the threats, about the 3-hour deadline. When I finished, Marco was quiet for a long moment. Here's what we're going to do. First, don't go home. Don't go anywhere familiar. Vincent's people are watching your usual locations. Second, I'm going to make some calls. People I trust, people who owe me favors. We're going to put protection on David and Keisha without them knowing. If Vincent's people see obvious security, they'll make their move. But if we're subtle, we can keep them safe while we figure out our next play. What about the FBI? Not yet. Vincent's right that they're stretched thin and we don't know how deep his connections go. But I know someone, a private investigator who used to work in organized crime. She's clean, she's good, and she can help us gather intelligence on Vincent's operation without tipping him off. Marco, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He paused. David helped me get out of that life. Helped me start over. I owe him everything. And your family now. So we protect the family. The relief that flooded through me was almost overwhelming. What do I do? Leave the restaurant. Not through the front. They're probably watching. Is there a back exit? Yes. Through the kitchen. Good. Take it. Walk 3 blocks east, then grab a rideshare to the Kimpton Hotel downtown. Check in under the name Sarah Martinez. I'll text you details for a credit card you can use. It's clean, can't be traced back to you. Stay in the room. Don't leave. I'll be there in 2 hours. The call ended and immediately my phone buzzed with the credit card information. Marco was efficient. I'd give him that. I moved quickly, grabbing my jacket and purse, making sure all the burners were off. As I headed for the back door, I took one last look at my restaurant. This place I'd built with my own hands, filled with my recipes and my dreams. I couldn't let Vincent destroy this. Couldn't let him destroy the life David and I had built. Whatever happened next, I was going to fight. The back alley was dark and smelled of garbage and rain. I walked quickly, keeping my head down, hyper-aware of every sound. Every car that passed made my heart jump. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. 3 blocks felt like 3 miles. When I finally slid into the back of a rideshare, I gave the driver the hotel address and forced myself to breathe. To think. To plan. Vincent Calabrese had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed that because I'd been a waitress, because I'd been invisible, I was weak. That I'd fold under pressure. He didn't understand that invisibility had never been a weakness. It had been a strategy. It had been survival. It had been power. And I'd learned from the best. From David, from my experience bringing down Hayward, from years of watching and listening and understanding how powerful people operated. Vincent wanted to use me to rebuild his empire. But what he didn't realize was that by bringing me into his operation, he'd be giving me access to everything. To his networks, his contacts, his vulnerabilities. He thought he was forcing me to help him. But maybe, just maybe, I could use this to destroy him instead. The hotel room was small but clean. I sat on the bed, my mind racing, waiting for Marco. My phone buzzed, a text from David. Hey babe, working late on a story. Don't wait up. Love you. I wanted to call him so badly. Wanted to hear his voice, wanted to warn him. But I couldn't risk it. Instead I texted back. Love you too. Be safe. 2 hours later there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole. Marco stood there looking exactly as I remembered. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples. He looked like he could be a businessman or a bouncer depending on the context. I opened the door and he stepped inside quickly, immediately checking the windows and securing the space. You okay? He asked, turning to face me. But I'm alive and David and Keisha are alive, so that's something. Marco nodded. I've got people on both of them. Ex-military, very good at their jobs. They'll keep watch without being obvious about it. Vincent's people won't know they're there. Thank you. I sat down heavily on the bed. What do we do now? Marco pulled out his phone, showing me a photo of Vincent Calabrese. My contact ran his face through some databases. Vincent's been operating internationally for the past 5 years, primarily in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. Money laundering, high-level smuggling operations, legitimate business fronts. He's smarter than his cousins were. More patient. More dangerous. So he's untouchable. Nobody's untouchable. Marco sat across from me. But taking him down won't be quick or easy. He's built his operation to be resilient. Lots of layers, lots of cutouts. If we go to the FBI right now with what we have, best case scenario, they start an investigation that takes months or years. Worst case, someone tips him off and he disappears. Then what's the play? Marco's expression was grim. You do exactly what he wants. You say yes. My stomach dropped. Are you serious? Hear me out. You say yes, you get inside his operation and you become our intelligence source. You gather evidence, real, actionable evidence that the FBI can use to bring him down quickly and completely. You do exactly what you did with Hayward, except this time you've got me and my team backing you up. That's insane. I'm not trained for this. I'm not. You brought down a corrupt DA and 3 mafia families. Marco's voice was firm. You're exactly trained for this. And you won't be alone. I'll be coordinating everything, keeping you safe, making sure David and Keisha stay protected. And if Vincent figures out what I'm doing, then we extract you immediately and go to the FBI with whatever we have. But Naomi, his eyes met mine. This is the only way to end this permanently. If we run, he'll find you eventually. If we go to the FBI now, he'll lawyer up or disappear. But if we do this right, we can put him away forever and make sure he never threatens you or anyone else again. Thought about my father. About Marcus, David's friend who died trying to expose corruption. About all the people Vincent had shown me in those crime scene photos. About the life David and I had built, the future deserved. Marco was right. Running wouldn't solve this. Going to the FBI wasn't fast enough. The only way to truly end this was to do what I'd done before. Get inside, gather evidence, and bring the whole thing crashing down. Okay, I said quietly. I'll do it. Marco nodded. Then here's how we play this. When Vincent contacts you at midnight, you tell him yes. You're scared you'll do whatever he wants. Play the victim. Make him think he's broken you. He'll give you instructions. Probably start with something small, something to test your loyalty. You do exactly what he says, but you document everything. Photos, recordings, names, locations. My team will set you up with equipment that Vincent won't detect. What about David? He needs to know. We'll tell him. But not until tomorrow morning, and not until we have protection fully in place. Right now, the safest thing for him is not to know anything. If Vincent's people are watching and he acts differently, it could tip them off. I hated it, but Marco was right. I checked my phone. 10:30 p.m. An hour and a half until Vincent's deadline. Get some rest, Marco said, standing. I'll be in the room next door. If anything happens, if you need anything, you knock on that wall 3 times and I'm here in 10 seconds. Understood? Understood. After he left, I lay down on the hotel bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep was impossible. My mind kept running through scenarios, possibilities, all the ways this could go wrong. But I also thought about all the times things had seemed impossible before. When I was just a waitress trying to survive. When my father died and I thought I'd never feel whole again. When David and I were trapped in that warehouse facing Richard Hayward. Somehow we'd survived all of it. Somehow we'd found a way through. We'd find a way through this too. At exactly midnight my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Oh. Vincent's voice was smooth, satisfied. I hoped you'd be smart about this. Have you made your decision? I swallowed hard, channeling every ounce of fear and vulnerability I actually felt. Yes. I'll help you. Just please don't hurt my husband or my sister. I'll do whatever you want. Good girl. There was triumph in his voice and it made my skin crawl. I knew you'd see reason. Here's going to happen. Tomorrow you're going to receive a package at your restaurant. Inside will be a phone. Use that to contact me from now on. Also inside will be details for your first assignment. Something simple. Something to prove you're serious. What kind of assignment? Vincent's voice hardened. Naomi? Don't even think about double-crossing me. I meant what I said about your family. You help me, they live. You betray me, they die slowly. We clear? Crystal clear. Excellent. Welcome to the family business, Mrs. Valentine. The line went dead. I sat there for a long moment, my hands shaking, feeling like I'd just made a deal with the devil. Then I knocked 3 times on the wall. Marco was in my room in seconds. What happened? I told him everything Vincent had said. Marco nodded grimly. Tomorrow we'll intercept that package before you open it. My tech guy will clone the phone so we can monitor all communications. Whatever assignment Vincent gives you, we'll make sure you're protected every step of the way. Marco, I said quietly. What if this doesn't work? What if I can't pull this off? He looked at me with steady certainty. You can. I've seen what you're capable of. How David's told me the stories. You're stronger than Vincent realizes. And that's going to be his downfall. I wanted to believe him. Had to believe him. Because the alternative, failing, getting David or Keisha killed, ending up as another crime scene photo in Vincent's collection, was unthinkable. The next morning I went back to my restaurant. Marco's people were watching. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there. David had texted asking if everything was okay and I'd lied, said I'd stayed with Carmen because I wasn't feeling well. Hated lying to him, but it was necessary. Just for now. The package arrived at 10 a.m. via courier. A plain brown box, no return address. I waited until the restaurant was empty, then opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a burner phone and a handwritten note. Your assignment. There's a city council meeting tonight at 7 p.m. discussing new zoning regulations for the Pearl District. Council member James Morrison is voting yes on the measure. We need him to vote no. Use your restaurant to cater a private dinner for Morrison at 6 p.m. We'll provide the guest list. During dinner, you'll slip an envelope into Morrison's briefcase. The envelope will contain photographs and documents that will convince him to change his vote. Simple, clean, no violence. Complete this task and we'll know you're serious. Fail and your sister stops answering her phone. The phone will ring at 5 p.m. with further details. My stomach turned. This was how it started. Small tasks that seemed harmless but compromised you piece by piece. Today it was blackmailing a city council member. Tomorrow it would be something worse. I took photos of everything with the special camera Marco had given me, disguised as a compact mirror. Then I called the number Marco had provided. He answered immediately. What's the assignment? I explained everything. This is actually good. Gives us a lot to work with. Here's what we're going to do. You'll cater the dinner exactly as requested. But the envelope you slip into Morrison's briefcase won't be the one Vincent provides. My team will create a duplicate with harmless documents inside. The real envelope, the blackmail material, that's evidence we'll keep. We photograph it, document it, add it to our case against Vincent. But what about Morrison's vote? Vincent is watching, he is watching. So Morrison will vote no just like Vincent wants. But tomorrow morning, Morrison will receive an anonymous tip telling him about the blackmail attempt, including photos of the real envelope contents. He'll go to the FBI himself. That starts an official investigation into Vincent without you being directly involved. That's brilliant. That's just the beginning. Marco's voice was firm. Every task Vincent gives you, we turn it into evidence against him. Every contact he has you make, we document. Every illegal thing he asks you to do, we prevent the actual harm while making him think you succeeded. We build an airtight case, and when we have enough, we bring it all down at once. How long will this take? Weeks, maybe a couple months. I won't lie to you, Naomi. This is going to be hard. You're going to have to lie to David, keep up appearances with Vincent, and live with constant danger. But we'll keep you safe. I promise. I closed my eyes thinking about my father. About what he would tell me to do. He'd always said that doing the right thing wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. Okay, I said. Let's do this. The dinner that night went exactly as planned. Council member Morrison arrived at 6 with 4 guests. All people Vincent had approved. I served them my father's recipes, smiled, played the gracious host. And when Morrison went to the bathroom, I slipped the envelope into his briefcase, my heart hammering the entire time. At 7:30, Morrison left to vote at the council meeting. At 8:15 I received a text on the burner phone. Well done. Next assignment coming tomorrow. You're proving useful. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Wanted to scream. But instead I cleaned up from dinner, locked up the restaurant, and drove home to my husband. David was waiting up for me, concern written all over his face. Hey, are you okay? You've seemed off the past couple days. This was it. The moment I had to decide. Keep lying or tell him the truth and risk everything. I looked at David, this man I loved more than anything, and I made my choice. I sat down beside him on the couch and took his hands in mine. David, something's happened. And I need you to listen to everything before you react, okay? His face went pale. Are you sick? Is it Keisha? No. Nothing like that. I took a deep breath. 3 days ago a man came to the restaurant. His name is Vincent Calabrese. I watched the color drain completely from David's face. He knew that name. Knew what it meant. I told him everything. About Vincent's threats, about Marco's plan, about the assignment I'd just completed. About how I was going to work with Marco to gather evidence and bring Vincent down from the inside. When I finished, David was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up, running his hands through his hair, pacing. "Oh, absolutely not. We're going to the FBI right now. Tonight. We're not playing games with this psychopath. David, no, Naomi." He turned to face me and I saw fear and fury warring in his eyes. "I've lived that life. I know how dangerous this is. Vincent isn't like Hayward. He's smarter, more ruthless. If he even suspects you're working against him, he'll kill you without hesitation. I know that. But Marco's plan is solid. And if we go to the FBI now, Vincent will disappear or lawyer up, and we'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Then we disappear. We go into witness protection for real this time. We start over somewhere new." I stood up, meeting his eyes. "For how long, David? How many times do we run? How many new identities, new cities, new lives? When does it end?" "It ends when you're alive." His voice broke. "I can't lose you, Naomi. I won't survive it." I crossed to him, taking his face in my hands. "You're not going to lose me. Marco has people protecting me. Protecting you and Keisha. We're doing this smart, careful, the right way. There's no right way to do something this dangerous. You did it," I said quietly. "You took down your own empire from the inside. You risked everything to do the right thing. I'm just doing the same thing. That was different. I was already in that world. I knew how to navigate it." "You're what? A waitress?" I pulled back, feeling a flash of anger. "You think I can't handle this because I served drinks instead of running a criminal empire? That's not what I meant." David's voice was desperate. I love you. I can't watch you put yourself in danger like this." "Then don't watch." I softened my tone, stepping close to him again. "Trust me. Trust that I can do this. Trust that I'm strong enough and smart enough to pull this off. You believed in me when we took down Hayward. Believe in me now." David pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. "If anything happens to you, I'll never forgive myself. Nothing's going to happen." I held him just as tightly. "I promise." It was a promise I hoped I could keep. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of my life. By day I ran my restaurant, served customers, smiled and chatted like everything was normal. By night I became someone else. Vincent Calabrese's reluctant operative, carrying out tasks that got progressively darker. First it was small things. Delivering packages. Making introductions. Passing messages. Each time Marco's team would intercept, document and neutralize any real harm while making sure Vincent believed I'd succeeded. But then the assignments got worse. Vincent had me befriend the wife of a federal judge, gaining access to their home under the pretense of catering a dinner party. While there, I was supposed to plant listening devices in the judge's study. Marco's team swapped the real devices for fakes, but I still had to go through with it, had to stand in that judge's home, knowing I was violating his privacy, even if the devices wouldn't actually work. I had to help launder money through my restaurant, accepting large catering orders that were really just cash drops. Marco documented everything, but I still had to touch that money. Still had to smile and thank Vincent's associates when they complimented my food. I had to attend meetings in back rooms and warehouses, listening to men discuss crimes they were planning. Had to sit there silent while they talked about hurting people, destroying lives, building their empire on suffering. Every night I came home and showered until the water ran cold, trying to wash away the feeling of complicity. David would hold me while I cried, but there was nothing he could say to make it better. Nothing anyone could say. The only thing that kept me going was knowing that every task, every meeting, every horrible thing Vincent made me do was being documented. Was building toward something. Was going to bring him down. Marco checked in with me almost daily. "Are you okay? Can you keep going?" And I'd say yes, because what choice did I have? Vincent had made it clear. If I stopped, if I ran, David and Keisha would pay the price. But I wasn't okay. The weight of what I was doing was crushing me. I stopped sleeping more than a few hours a night. Stopped eating regularly. My restaurant staff started asking if I was sick. Carmen cornered me one day, concern written all over her face. "Naomi, what's going on? You look exhausted. Is everything okay with you and David?" "I'm fine," I lied. "Just stressed with the restaurant. You know how it is." But she wasn't convinced. Neither was Keisha, who called me worried because I'd been distant lately, hadn't been answering her calls as quickly as usual. I was drowning and I couldn't tell anyone. Couldn't reach out for help because the only people who knew the truth were David and Marco, and they were drowning too. David with fear for my safety, Marco with the weight of coordinating this whole operation. Then 7 weeks in, everything changed. Vincent called me on the burner phone at 2 in the morning. I answered groggily, my heart already racing because nothing good ever came from a 2 a.m. call. "We have a problem," Vincent said without preamble. "And you're going to fix it." "What problem?" "One of my associates, Carlos Mendez, is talking to the FBI. He's scared, thinks he's going to get arrested, so he's trying to cut a deal. I need you to deliver a message to him." "What kind of message?" "The kind that reminds him what happens to people who betray the family." Vincent's voice was cold. "Tomorrow night, Carlos will be at the Lotus Lounge on East Burnside. You're going to meet him there, slip something into his drink. Nothing fatal, just enough to put him in the hospital for a few days. Give him time to reconsider his choices." My blood ran cold. "You want me to poison someone?" "I want you to send a message. This is the job, Naomi. This is what you signed up for. I can't, you can and you will. Or I make a phone call and your sister never makes it to her morning classes. Your choice." The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, my whole body shaking. This was different. This wasn't slipping an envelope into a briefcase or planting fake listening devices. Vincent was asking me to actually hurt someone. To poison them. I couldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. But if I refused, Keisha would die. Beside me, David stirred. "What's wrong?" I told him everything, my voice breaking. "I can't do this, David. I can't hurt someone. I don't care what Marco says, I can't call him." David was already reaching for his phone. "Call Marco right now. This is the line. We're done." Marco answered on the first ring. I told him about Vincent's new assignment. There was a long pause. Then, "Okay. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the piece that makes everything else make sense." "What are you talking about?" I was confused, exhausted, terrified. Every assignment until now has been plausibly deniable. Blackmail, money laundering. Vincent could claim he was testing you, not actually ordering crimes. But attempted poisoning? That's conspiracy to commit assault. That's a serious felony with serious prison time. And if we catch him on tape ordering it, if we document the whole thing, that's the centerpiece of our case. So what do? You do exactly what he says. But the poison you'll put in Carlos's drink will actually just be food coloring. Something that makes his drink look different but won't hurt him. Carlos is already cooperating with the FBI, so we'll warn him in advance. He'll pretend to get sick, get taken to the hospital. Everything will look real. Vincent will think you came through. And we'll have him on tape ordering you to poison a federal witness. I felt dizzy. This is really happening. This is really happening. Marco's voice was firm. "1 more month, Naomi. Maybe less. We're so close. Can you hold on?" I looked at David, his hand holding mine, his eyes full of fear and love and faith in me. "Yes," I whispered. "I can hold on." The next night I walked into the Lotus Lounge feeling like I was moving through a dream. Or a nightmare. The bar was dimly lit, full of Portland's young professional crowd. Carlos Mendez sat at a corner table nursing a whiskey, looking nervous. Marco had told me Carlos was expecting me. That he knew this was all part of building a case against Vincent. But actually seeing him there, knowing what I was about to do, even if it was fake, made my stomach turn. I ordered a drink at the bar, my hands shaking as I pulled out the small vial Marco had given me. Just food coloring. Nothing harmful. But to anyone watching it would look like poison. Vincent's people were watching. I could feel their eyes on me from across the bar. I took my drink and Carlos's fresh whiskey from the bartender and moved toward his table. As I passed, I stumbled slightly, a practiced move, and while steadying myself I added the drops to his drink. "Sorry," I murmured. "No problem," Carlos said, right on cue. I continued to a different table, sat down, pretended to check my phone. 5 minutes later, Carlos took a drink. Then another. Then he clutched his stomach and stood up, his face going pale. The bartender rushed over. "Sir, are you okay?" I don't feel good." Carlos's acting was perfect. "Something's wrong," he collapsed. The bar erupted into chaos. Someone called 911. Within minutes, paramedics arrived, loading Carlos onto a stretcher. I slipped out during the confusion, my heart pounding. Made it 3 blocks before I had to stop and throw up in an alley. Even knowing it was fake, even knowing Carlos was fine, I felt like I'd crossed a line I could never come back from. My phone buzzed. "The burner. Nicely done. You're proving yourself valuable. More assignments coming soon." I wanted to throw the phone into traffic. Wanted to scream. But instead I got in my car and drove home to David, who held me while I cried and told me over and over that it wasn't real, that I hadn't actually hurt anyone, that I was doing the right thing. But it felt real. And that was the problem. 3 days later, Marco called with news. "We have enough. The poisoning order plus everything else you've documented over the past 2 months. It's enough to bring Vincent down. The FBI is ready to move." Relief flooded through me, so intense I had to sit down. "It's really over?" "Almost. There's one more thing. The FBI wants to set up a meeting between you and Vincent. Get him on tape admitting to everything. The threats against your family, the assignments he's given you, the whole operation. Once we have that, they'll make their move. 2 days from now. Can you hold it together that long?" I looked around my restaurant. My beautiful restaurant that had become tainted by everything I'd done for Vincent. 2 more days. I could do 2 more days. "Yes," I said. "Let's finish this." The meeting was set for Thursday night at a warehouse in Northwest Portland. Vincent had chosen the location. Said he wanted to discuss my future role in his organization. Marco and the FBI would be watching, recording everything. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything that could go wrong. What if Vincent suspected something? What if the recording equipment failed? What if his people discovered the FBI surveillance? Around 3 a.m. I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. Started making my father's jerk chicken. The recipe I'd finally perfected after months of trying. I needed to do something with my hands, needed to connect with something real and good and honest. David found me there an hour later, the kitchen smelling of Scotch bonnet peppers and allspice. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Tomorrow's the last day," I said quietly. "Tomorrow this all ends one way or another. It's going to end the right way." David turned me to face him. "You're going to walk into that meeting, get Vincent on tape, and the FBI is going to arrest him. Then we're going to come home and we're going to start actually living our lives again. What if I can't do it? What if I freeze up or say the wrong thing or, you won't?" He kissed my forehead. "You're the strongest person I know, Naomi. You've survived everything life has thrown at you. You're going to survive this too." I wanted to believe him. Had to believe him. Thursday evening arrived too quickly and too slowly at the same time. I dressed carefully. Nice but not too nice, confident but not threatening. Marco had wired me up with recording equipment so sophisticated that Vincent would never detect it. A tiny microphone in my necklace, a backup in the lining of my jacket, a panic button disguised as a bracelet charm. David drove me to within a block of the warehouse. We sat in the car for a long moment, not speaking. Finally, he broke the silence. "I love you. Whatever happens in there, remember that. I love you too." I squeezed his hand. "See you on the other side." The warehouse was exactly what I expected. Concrete and shadows, the kind of place where bad things happened and no one asked questions. Vincent was already there when I arrived, along with 2 of his associates. Men I recognized from some of the meetings I'd attended. Men with cold eyes and guns barely concealed under their jackets. Know me. Vincent smiled like we were old friends. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? I kept my voice steady, remembering Marco's instructions. Act nervous but not too nervous. Compliant but not enthusiastic. We always have choices. Vincent gestured to a chair. Sit. We have much to discuss. I sat, hyper-aware of the recording equipment, of the FBI agents Marco had assured me were watching from multiple locations. One word from me, one signal, and they'd come crashing in. But I needed Vincent to talk first. Needed him to incriminate himself. You've done well these past 2 months, Vincent began, circling me slowly. Better than I expected, honestly. When I first approached you, I thought you'd be a liability. A scared little waitress playing at being brave. But you've proven me wrong. I did what you asked. My voice came out smaller than I intended. Can we be done now? I've proven myself. You said if I helped you, you'd leave my family alone. And I will. Eventually. Vincent stopped in front of me. But see, Naomi, you've become too valuable. You have skills I didn't fully appreciate. That invisibility you possess. The way people underestimate you. It's incredibly useful. I have much bigger plans for you. My stomach sank. What kind of plans? I'm expanding operations. New York, Chicago, Miami. I need someone I can trust in each city. Someone who can move through legitimate business circles without raising suspicion. Someone exactly like you. I shook my head. No. That's not what we agreed. I did what you asked. I want out. Vincent's smile disappeared. You don't get to want out. You're in this now whether you like it or not. He pulled out his phone, showing me recent photos of Keisha. Your sister looks happy, doesn't she? Engineering degree, new job at a tech firm. Whole life ahead of her. Would be a shame if something happened to her. Fury overrode my fear. You said you'd leave her alone if I cooperated. I said I'd leave her alone if you continued to cooperate. Vincent's voice turned cold. Let me be very clear about something, Naomi. You don't work for me because I'm asking nicely. You work for me because I own you. Because I can destroy everything you love with one phone call. You belong to me now. There it was. The threat. The admission of everything he'd done. I touched my bracelet charm, the signal to Marco that I had what we needed. But Vincent wasn't done. You know what I admire most about you? You actually thought you could play me. Thought you could gather evidence, build a case, bring me down like you did with Hayward. My blood turned to ice. What? Vincent laughed. You really think I didn't know? That I didn't have people watching you? Watching Marco Santini? I've known about your little FBI operation since week 2. The world tilted beneath me. That's not, I couldn't have what? Let you continue? Vincent pulled a gun, pointing it casually at my chest. Oh, but I did. Because watching you scramble around, thinking you were so clever documenting my operations, it was entertaining. And it gave me something valuable. What? Proof that you're willing to betray people. Proof that I can use against you if you ever think about running to the authorities. Because now I have documentation of everything you did for me. The blackmail, the money laundering, the poisoning. And yes, Naomi, Carlos Mendez, the man you thought you fake poisoned, he really did get sick. We switched Marco's vials. You actually poisoned him. Well, the word came out as a whisper. No, that's not true, it's very true. Carlos spent 3 days in the hospital with severe gastric distress. Could have died if the doctors hadn't caught it in time. So now you're not just a witness in my operation, you're an actual criminal. You hurt someone. And if you go to the FBI, I'll make sure they know you acted willingly. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. This couldn't be happening. Marco had said it was just food coloring. Had said Carlos was in on it. Had said, where do you think Marco is right now? Vincent asked, reading my mind. He's in a very dark room having a very unpleasant conversation with some of my associates. Turns out his security firm wasn't as clean as he thought. He owed some people money. Made him surprisingly easy to flip. You're lying. But even as I said it, I felt the truth of it sinking in. The way Marco had been so insistent I keep going. The way he'd always had an explanation for everything. The way he'd pushed me to do more, risk more. Vincent shrugged. Tell you what, let's call him. See if he answers. He pulled out his phone, dialed. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Must be indisposed. Vincent's smile was cruel. Face it, Naomi. You've been played from the beginning. There is no FBI operation. There is no evidence being gathered against me. There's just you alone having committed actual crimes for my organization. You're trapped. And now you're going to do exactly what I say for as long as I say, or I'll make sure you go to prison for everything you've done. I felt tears burning my eyes but refused to let them fall. I touched my bracelet charm again, more urgently this time. But no one came crashing through the doors. No FBI agents. No rescue. Just silence. Vincent saw my gesture, laughed. Oh, that's adorable. You're still hoping someone's coming to save you. He reached over, yanked the necklace off my neck, pulled the microphone out. Then he patted down my jacket, found the backup device, crushed it under his heel. No one's listening, Naomi. No one's coming. You're all alone. And then just when I thought all hope was lost, I heard it. A voice from the shadows. Actually, she's not alone at all. David stepped into the light and my heart stopped. Oh. No, he was supposed to be blocks away, supposed to be safe. Vincent turned, gun swinging toward David. Well, this is unexpected. The husband. Come to save his damsel in distress? Something about Vincent's tone was wrong. Too confident. Too unsurprised. And then I understood. Oh God. David, it's a trap, I know. David's voice was calm. Vincent, I believe you have something that belongs to me. Vincent smiled. In the safe. Just like we agreed. My mind couldn't process what I was hearing. Couldn't make sense of David talking to Vincent like they were business partners. David looked at me then, and what I saw in his eyes made my world shatter. I'm sorry, Naomi. I really am. But you were never supposed to be part of this. What? The word came out broken. Vincent and I have been working together for months. Since before he ever approached you at the restaurant. David moved closer and I saw it now. The calculation in his expression, the coldness I'd only seen once before back when he was Dominic Valente. I needed to disappear for real. Completely. And Vincent needed someone with my expertise to help restructure his operations after the losses from Hayward's takedown. So you set me up? I could barely get the words out. Everything, the threats, the assignments, all of it, was to give me leverage. David's voice was matter-of-fact. If I just disappeared, the FBI would look for me. But if I died? If I was killed by Vincent Calabrese in retaliation for my cooperation against his family? Then the FBI would close my file and I'd be free to start over with a new identity and several $1 million in offshore accounts. But you needed a witness, I said slowly, the horrible truth dawning. Someone to tell the FBI that Vincent killed you. Someone credible who'd been forced to work with him, who had every reason to believe it was real. Very good. David almost smiled. You were perfect, Naomi. The traumatized wife, forced to watch her husband die. Your testimony would seal the case against Vincent, he'd go to prison and everyone would believe I was dead. Win-win. Except I'd spend the rest of my life thinking you were dead. Grieving you. Better than the alternative. David's voice hardened. When I was Dominic Valente, I had power. Purpose. Meaning. But as David Valentine? I'm just a journalist writing stories that don't matter. Living a small life in a small city. You seemed happy with that. But I wasn't. I'm not. So you used me. Everything, our relationship, our marriage, all of it, was just a tool to help you escape. Not everything. David's expression softened slightly. I did love you, Naomi. In my way. You made me feel human again. Made me think I could be someone better. But in the end, I am who I am. And who I am is not someone who belongs in your world. The betrayal was so complete, so overwhelming that I couldn't even feel it yet. My mind was just numb. So what now? I asked. You fake your death, Vincent goes to prison based on my testimony, and you disappear with your blood money? That's the plan. Vincent raised his gun again. I'll shoot David, blanks of course. He'll fall play dead. You'll run screaming for help. The FBI will find David's body. Actually a corpse Vincent has already prepared. Same height and build, DNA conveniently contaminated. I'll disappear before they can arrest me. Case closed. Me? What happens to me? You get to live. David's voice was almost gentle. You get to go back to your restaurant, your sister, your life. You'll grieve, eventually you'll heal and you'll move on. I'm actually doing you a favor, Naomi. Setting you free from a marriage that was never going to work. The numbness was starting to crack, and underneath it was a rage so pure and hot that it burned away everything else. Insult me again, I said quietly, and I'll end you. Vincent laughed. There's that fire. See, David, this is what I was talking about. He's got spirit. But David wasn't laughing. He was looking at me with something that might have been regret. Naomi, save it. I stood up, my whole body shaking with fury. You want to know what's really funny about your brilliant plan? It's already failed. What are you talking about? Vincent's gun steadied on me. Marco wasn't flipped. The FBI is real. And they're not listening through my wires. Those were decoys. They're listening through the ones David's wearing. I watched David's face go pale. That's impossible. I wasn't, you were. I cut him off. That night you thought you were comforting me after the Carlos assignment? When you held me while I cried. Marco gave me micro devices to plant on you. In your jacket collar. In your watch. In your belt buckle. Because I suspected something was wrong. The way you always knew exactly what to say to keep me going. The way you pushed me to do more. And Marco suspected too. You're blinking, Vincent said, but I saw doubt creeping into his expression. Then why haven't you heard from your people who were supposed to be watching David? Why hasn't Marco checked in? I took a step forward. Because they're all being arrested right now. And in about 30 seconds, this warehouse is going to be surrounded by actual FBI agents. On cue I heard it. Sirens. Multiple vehicles. The sound of boots hitting pavement. FBI. Don't move. The doors burst open, red laser sights painting David and Vincent like targets. Vincent tried to run. Made it 3 steps before he was tackled by agents. David just stood there, his face blank as they cuffed him. An agent, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, approached me. Mrs. Valentine? Are you all right? I'm not Mrs. Valentine anymore. My voice was steady despite the tears streaming down my face. My name is Naomi Wright. Fair enough. The agent, her badge said Special Agent Chin, nodded. We got everything. The threats, the admissions, David's involvement. It's over. But it wasn't over. Not really. Because David was being led away in handcuffs and he stopped, looked back at me one last time. Hey, don't. I held up a hand. You're right about one thing. You are who you are. You're Dominic Valente. You always were. And I was a fool to think you could be anyone else. I did love you, he said quietly. That part was real. Well, I shook my head. You loved the idea of being loved. You loved having someone who made you feel human. But you never loved me enough to actually become the person I believed you could be. They led him away and I watched him go, feeling like I was watching a stranger. The aftermath was brutal. The story made national news. Former mafia boss fakes rehabilitation, plots elaborate scheme to fake his death and escape justice. The trial took months. I had to testify, had to relive every moment of those 2 months working for Vincent. Had to admit that I'd helped launder money, had helped blackmail a city councilman, had, God help me, actually poisoned someone even if I hadn't known it. But Agent Chin fought for me. Argued that I was a victim, coerced under threats to my family. The DA agreed to immunity in exchange for my testimony. I wouldn't face charges for anything I'd done under duress. Vincent Calabrese was convicted on 47 counts, including conspiracy to commit murder, extortion, racketeering. He'd die in prison. David, I couldn't think of him as Dominic even now, was convicted as well. 25 years to life. No possibility of parole. The day they sentenced him, I was in the courtroom. He looked at me once and I saw something in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or just regret at being caught. I didn't know. Didn't care. I sold the restaurant 6 months later. Couldn't walk through those doors anymore without remembering everything that had happened. Used the money to open a culinary school instead, teaching young people, many from underserved communities, how to cook. How to turn food into art, into opportunity, into hope. Keisha moved in with me for a while, helped me heal. She never said "I told you so," even though she'd had reservations about David from the start. She just held me when I cried and reminded me that I was stronger than this. Carmen was there too. And Marco, the real Marco who'd actually been working with the FBI the whole time, whose supposed betrayal had been part of the plan to draw out David's involvement. It took 2 years before I could sleep through the night without nightmares. 3 years before I could think about that time without feeling like I might shatter. But slowly, painfully, I healed. I started dating again eventually. Nothing serious. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready for serious again. But I went out, met people, reminded myself that not everyone was a liar. Not everyone was secretly a monster wearing a human face. 5 years after David's conviction, I was teaching an evening class at my culinary school when a student asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Chef Wright, what's the most important lesson you've learned about cooking?" I thought about it for a long moment. Then I said, that you can follow a recipe perfectly and still end up with something that tastes wrong. Because cooking isn't just about technique or ingredients. It's about intention. About who you're cooking for and why. About the love or care or hope you put into it. And if those things are corrupted, if the intention is false, then it doesn't matter how perfect everything else is. The dish will always be poisoned. The student nodded, not realizing I was talking about so much more than food. After class, I walked home through Portland streets that had finally started to feel safe again. Past my old restaurant, now a boutique, no trace of what it had been. Crossed the bridge where David and I had our first kiss. Back when I'd believed he was someone he wasn't. I'd once told Dominic Valente that if he insulted me again, I'd end him. In the end, he'd insulted me in the worst way possible. By pretending to love me, by using that love as a weapon, by believing I was weak enough, naive enough, desperate enough to be manipulated. But I hadn't ended him. I'd done something better. I'd survived him. And in surviving, I'd discovered something crucial. My worth had never been dependent on being seen by him or anyone else. My power had never come from being visible or invisible. My power came from knowing exactly who I was. From refusing to be diminished by people who underestimated me. From standing up every single day and choosing to be whole, to be worthy, to be enough. Not for anyone else but for myself. I was Naomi Wright. Restaurant worker turned culinary educator. Survivor of betrayal and manipulation. Woman who'd threatened to end a mafia boss and lived to tell the tale. And I was finally, truly free. The end. Or really just another beginning. Because that's what life is. A series of endings that lead to new beginnings if we're brave enough to keep going. And I'd always been brave enough. Even when I didn't know it. Especially then.